Welcome friends, and thank you once again for tuning in to Chilled Guitar Reviews. This week I am going to show you how to achieve a crushing, awesome metal tone on any guitar modeler. I've tested this particular signal chain on a huge array of modeling devices that you would have seen me use on this channel. Everything from the Valaton GP100 to the Boss GX100 to the Helix, to the Headrushes, to the Quad Cortexes. I promise you that if you follow this tutorial, this will absolutely work. So let's get building this thing. So the only additional thing you're gonna need besides yourself and your guitar modeler is the free impulse response I have included in the description of this video. This is one of the old school Catharsis impulse responses. It's of a Mesa 4x12 cabinet loaded with vintage 30s. It's just a fantastically neutral and balanced sounding impulse response that is a brilliant starting point for building really any type of guitar rig. You may prefer to use your own impulse response or cab sim, but the fastest way to follow this tutorial, get this crushing metal sound, is to download that free impulse response and use it in this tutorial. I am using my Headrush Core mostly because it just has a lovely clear user interface and a nice big screen so you can follow along with me on this. So here you can see we're starting with a completely brand new blank rig that sounds like this. The first thing to add into your signal chain is, I bet you've guessed this, a tube screamer. Now, this can be called a few different things depending on what modeling device you're using. It can be called a green scream, a green overdrive, an 808, like a Maxon 808 type thing. But effectively, on your modeling device, you are looking for the tube screamer. So you may have to Google to find out which one it is, but every single modeling device I've tried has a tube screamer emulation in it. And on the Headrush Core, this is called Green JRC OD. Now for the settings on this, I always have the level or volume cranked 100%. I have the tone set at 50%, and the drive is usually quite low. It's normally around like 2 or 3. So the idea is that we are just adding a bit of extra push and compression into the front of the amplifier. We are not relying on the tube screamer to give us all of our gain. We're gonna wanna try and get all the gain we can out of the amp head model that's gonna come in just a second. The next thing in this signal chain is to add a noise gate. Now, my approach for getting rid of excess noise that can be created by adding that tube screamer is to add a noise gate directly after it. Now, for the moment, I'm gonna leave this noise gate turned off because depending on your modeling device, you may not need it. Some modelers are just a bit cleaner than others. You know, clearly there will be different versions slightly of each pedal and amp in each modeler you're using. So let's have that noise gate just sat there in case we need it and in case we get a buildup of excess noise in a minute, we can just flick that thing on. Next up, the most important part of this signal chain is gonna be the amp model you're using. Now, I always use whatever the amp model is for the PV5150. However, you might be surprised to know that I do not normally use the channel with the most gain. If possible on my modeling device, I prefer to choose the crunch channel of a PV5150. Now, if on your particular modeling device you only have the one option for a PV5150, you don't have the crunch channel, that's absolutely fine. We can still use that, we'll just turn the gain down a bit more. So on Headrush, you can see it's called PV5112 Crunch. Now the thinking behind using the crunch channel as opposed to the lead channel is I just find you get a bit more of an open, fuller sound by overdriving that crunch channel. It's also a bit less noisy. I don't know, I just find that it's a much thicker, less kind of scooped and fizzy sound. It's nice and big and full and rich. So go for the crunch channel if you can on your modeling device. Next up is the second most important element in this signal chain, and that is going to be the cabinet simulation or IR that comes after the amp head. Now here is where we're going to slot in that impulse response I told you about at the start of the video. So I've just loaded in that impulse response. You can see it here, 2 off, pres 5. Now on most modeling devices I've tried, the impulse response block will have an option to add a high cut and a low cut. Make sure you do this on this impulse response. It's just taking away any extreme high or low frequencies that you aren't gonna want in your guitar sound anyway. Generally, I will high cut down to about 10K on this impulse response. However, if on your particular modeling device, the 5150 model has a lot of fizz, a lot of high end, you may want to high cut down as low as 8K. I do like to low cut up to around 150 Hertz just to get rid of any ridiculously sub-boomy bass frequencies, but adjust this to your liking. I do still like to leave a fair bit of low end in there just to get that nice thump. So we haven't touched any of the EQ settings on the amplifier yet at all. Let's just see how we're sounding. Pretty good, pretty good. Now the very last thing in the signal chain I like to add is just a delay. I go for something approximating a Boss digital delay pedal, which basically every modeler I've ever tried should have. Is normally called something like BBD. So if we just look in Headrush, there's a BBD delay, that's what we're looking for. So if we just load the default parameters, the delay is really there just to take the kind of dryness off the sound, give yourself a little bit of like space. I like to have that sort of stadium-y, echoey kind of feel. Not too much, just enough so it's sort of there in the background. So typically I will just have most of the settings set at 50%, just default values. The delay in milliseconds, I normally set that to between 450 and 500 milliseconds, just to give you that nice kind of stadium sound. Now in terms of the mix, like I'll normally leave that fairly low. Like, I mean, if we go 30% for lead stuff. So that's fairly high in the mix, but for anything else like rhythm guitar wise, I will leave it to like 20-ish, like just so it's there in the background. Let's see how that sounds now at 23%. Yeah, that's about right, I think. So that is our signal chain completed. All there is left to do is just tweak the gain and tweak the EQ in the amplifier to your personal tastes. So as you can see, all of the EQ settings on the amp model are currently just at 50%, which is like the neutral point on the pot. So I mean, I personally would like a little bit more gain. On the 5150 amp models, you have 2 lots of gain to adjust. You have a pre-gain knob and you have a post-gain knob. So, I mean, let's set those like just over halfway. Let's set them both at 60. That's normally where I find the sweet spot is for me. I mean, that's pretty much it, to be honest with you. Depending on if you have active pickups like this, or if you have lower output pickups, you may want to increase, decrease the gain to your personal taste. But I generally don't touch the EQ at all. I just leave low, mid, and high 50%. Same goes for whatever the default value of the presence knob is. Unless there is something coming through that you don't like, then just leave it. And really, that's a good philosophy for shaping tones and production in general. The best approach is to take away if there is something you're hearing you don't like. Don't add things to try and fix it and compensate and boost more stuff and just add more chaos to the frequencies. If you do find at this point that you're starting to get some noise, just go back and engage that noise gate that we added at the start of the signal chain. That should help. Again, just the default values should be fine. But look, we've got the tube screamer up front. That's just barely driving the amplifier, the noise gate, the amp, that cabinet sim IR with just a basic high and low cut and a 500 millisecond delay at the end. And tell me this isn't a good metal tone. So there we have it, my friends. That should enable you to get a great metal tone no matter what guitar modeler you have. Now, some homework for you from Mr. Jimmy. Go and try this on your guitar modeler and let me know how you get on. Have you tweaked things? If you have, what have you changed? Have you found certain things work better on certain modeling devices? Help everybody out by letting us know in the comments section below. But I'm telling you, this is a very good starting point no matter what guitar modeler you own. If you found this video useful and you're now enjoying a crushing metal sound, please say thank you by subscribing to the channel and hitting the thumbs up button on this video. It really helps me with the algorithm gods. Better yet, you can support me via the Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description below. Any financial support, no matter how small, is gratefully received, and it all goes straight back into the channel and towards producing cool guitar content for you guys. Until the next chilled guitar video, do take care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon.